Welcome to The Metal Voice. Today on the show, big news, my friend. We have the one, the only Thunderstick, or some people like to call him Barry Graham Purkis.
That's it. Well, a good pronunciation of my surname. That's great. Hi there, everybody. Nice to talk to you.
All right, there's a lot of stuff we could talk about here, Barry. Lots of stuff, or should I call you Thunder? It's whatever you want.
Barry's fine. Thunderstick isn't out to play today.
All right.
So you got the lesser person, the real Barry Graham Purkis, as opposed to the real Thunderstick.
All right. Okay. Let's go. Let's start off with the history, and we'll move into the present. How's that?
I studied work in a recording studio. It was working for a company called Pi, and they were responsible for reasonable acts. And I was a tape op. I was training to become a sound engineer. But what happened was that I used to get so frustrated at being on the wrong side of the glass, and recording these guys as opposed to actually out there doing it for myself. And so I kind of gave that up and started really working hard at trying to play in a band that was suitable. I started playing when I was 9 years old. My parents bought me a drum kit because they really wanted to keep their furniture. And I had a pair of drumsticks that I was using to beat up on their furniture. So yeah, it was a frustrating time. But by the time that I was 18, I had been in several bands.
Iron Maiden, the brief period in Iron Maiden. So from at what point, how did you get in the band? Who invited you to the band, or did you audition? What happened?
I started playing. I joined up with a little band that was local to me, and I was constantly trying and looking for, the band, as it were. And suddenly this, in those days, you didn't have obviously anything like the internet or anything such as like. The way that bands communicated was through the back pages of a magazine, or not a magazine, a weekly music paper called Melody Maker, and it was a religious thing that if you were a musician looking for a gig, you'd always turn to the back pages, and there would be all the different adverts from various bands. And sure enough, there was an advert in there for a keyboard player and a drummer for this band called Iron Maiden. And so I answered the ad. I went along and auditioned, much like many other drummers. I can remember sitting in a corridor with just non-stop drummers all the way down this corridor. Next. And that was kind of it, and I got the gig. And so they were advertising for a keyboard player at the same time, and that's when a guy called Tony Moore came on board, and that was it. The lineup was myself, Steve, obviously, a singer called Dennis Wilcock, a guitarist called Terry Watpram, and Tony Moore on keyboards.
And Steve Harris. Was he calling the shots back then, or was it a band decision? Who hired you? Was it Steve? Was it the band? Was it a democracy? What was the workings, the inner workings?
Well, you see, therein lies the story. Who hired me? I always thought at the time, when I first joined, I really thought that it was a joint effort of both Steve Harris and Dennis Wilcock. Dennis being the singer, and he was the man that was at the time responsible for the logos and stuff like that. I mean, the typeface that Iron Maiden still use to this day was formulated back in those days. We're talking 1977. And Dennis, he had such a large import into the band at that time that I really did think that the two of them were co-running it, as it were. But Steve Harris would make an effort to come up to my house. I owned a house in southeast London, and the rest of the guys were all from the East End, very proud of their heritage, as Steve still is. So it was like, for me, crossing over from South London to East London was almost like going into a completely unknown territory.
Yeah.
Because, it really was. They were all EastEnders. But Steve would come to my house, and we would then go through bass and drum parts. And I'd never done that before. I'd always rehearsed with bands, of course, but I'd never actually sort of, knocked it down to the point where you only have the bass and drums. So you're building a rhythm section rather than building a band. And that's what we used to do. And then we'd rehearse with the whole band back in the East End.
Let me ask you this. So what songs, we have the first two Iron Maiden albums, and the first, I'm sure there was a lot of songs in your set list back then from those first two albums, minus a few tracks, right, that they rewrote. They wrote after, Killers, during Killers.
Yeah, exactly right.
What songs do you remember that you were playing back then, or learning back then, or contributed back then?
If you give me 2 seconds, I've got a reel-to-reel tape here.
Yeah.
That I can show your audience. So two seconds.
Sure.
Let's get it.
Yeah, it's all good. And bring the mask.
I haven't got it to hand, man. I really haven't.
Well, I thought you had it in your back pocket all the time.
Yeah, right. Yeah, because I do. Yeah. Right, hang on. Let me get this out and if I can find it.
So everybody knows, Barry is now going through his archives looking for the original tapes that they recorded during Iron Maiden and around, I guess I would say, the time frame of 1977.
77, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know whether have you seen or heard any of the...
Well, I've heard them online, and I mean, I'm anxiously waiting for some sort of album of some sort. Are these live recordings or demos?
Neither. They're just rehearsal tapes.
Rehearsal tapes.
So, where are you?
Don't play them, though. Don't play them.
No, I'm not.
Just show us what you got.
There we go. So...
Okay, hold it still. Okay, wow, look at that. So there's the listing, right? So everybody could see. That's very cool.
If you have a look on my Facebook, just scroll down my Facebook. You'll see a picture.
I'll grab it. Okay, good.
Okay, so we have Burning Ambition.
Great song.
Drifter, Sanctuary, Prowler, Another Life, Transylvania, Strange World, Purgatory, Charlotte the Harlot, Wrathchild, Innocent Exile, and Iron Maiden, the track.
Did you contribute to any of these songs? What was your hand in these songs? Was there anything?
Yes and no. Yes, in as much as that you probably know the story of...
yes, Thunderburst.
Thunderburst, and Ides of March.
Yes.
As regards to the songs on the tape there, no, I didn't really. I will formulate my own drum parts for them, and we would change drum and bass parts accordingly. So you could say, yes, I was actually contributing in as much as that maybe I was the first drummer to come in that Steve would try and work alongside. And because of my style of playing and his style of playing, you obviously have to find a middle ground to be able to mesh to create that perfect drum and bass rhythm section. And so, so my input was my ability. And then we started, a little later on, we started working, actually I was inputting regarding the songwriting, but never got credit on anything, ever.
I mean, when you listen to the Iron Maiden albums today, the rhythm patterns of the drummers, right? Do you say, "Hey, man, that was mine. That was mine there. That was my idea"? Do you listen to something like Iron Maiden and go, "That's my rhythm pattern right there"?
Yes and no. Yeah. I mean, again, Nico is a very different drummer from me.
Sure.
And I mean, you're always going to hear something that you've contributed to. You're always going to hear and think to yourself, that was due to me, and that little break there was due to me. So yes, of course. All
right. So those 1977 recordings, and I'm sure you have more than just one, right? Will they ever be released? Do you need Steve's permission? I mean, what's going on? Will these ever be released on some sort of album format or CD format or available online?
Who knows, Julie? Who knows?
Who owns
that-
these tapes other than yourself?
I mean, I have put these little 30-second bursts on my Facebook, and the kind of interest that it's generated has been quite phenomenal. I mean, there are certain people that turn around and say that they look on it as the heavy metal Holy Grail to have something such as that, a 1977 recording of those songs that I've just shown you. I don't know. There is no way that I could go out and release them, because I would be. I should imagine the full force of Iron Maidens, legal team would come down on me from a great height, because the songs contained therein are Steve Harris compositions. However, I own the tape.
And you played on them, right? And you played on them too.
Yeah, I own my performance on that tape. I own the tape because there are the bands that I was telling you about, such as Oz and Archer, they are also recorded on that reel-to-reel tape. So obviously, because of that, you can see that I own the tape, and I own the tape recorder that made those tape recordings. However, I don't own the copyright to the songs, of course. That's never up for dispute anyway. So we have that, and also I own my performance, but I don't own everybody else's performance within it.
Yeah.
So, yes,
well, Barry, have you ever approached the legal team of Iron Maiden and said, "Hey guys, can we do something together here"?
No, not yet. No.
Will you be doing that?
Well, funny
And it
enough,
doesn't hurt. It doesn't hurt to ask, right?
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, they give you a cut, you get a cut, they get a cut. It's all good for everyone, right?
I don't know. I don't really don't.
Do you want me to send the message for you?
No, thank you.
I can represent you. I just need a cut, though. Sorry.
I saw Steve Harris just at the beginning of December.
Okay.
So he played locally to here with his British Lion Band.
Yes.
And he was quite taken aback that I was there, because I kind of walked around the corner, and he was preparing himself ready to go on stage. And I just walked around the corner, and he went, "Oh my God, man!" And he couldn't believe it. I went, "Bloody hell!" And I haven't seen Steve since. Well, the last time I saw him, just to briefly talk to, because I was spending most of the time talking to Bruce, was socially in America in 1985. I saw him at Clive Burr's funeral, but he just sort of he attended the service and then disappeared afterwards. Whereas Bruce stayed for the kind of the post drinking and talking.
But you have more of a history with Bruce as well, too. So I mean,
that's
of
course,
it, right?
Yeah, very much.
Which is it's only normal. How did Steve Harris? Let me ask you, what was your first impression of Steve Harris? Not today, but back in the day, like when you first met him. He's brilliant, or he's not so brilliant, or what was your first impression that you had? Good and bad.
It was work in progress. I mean, we're all young guys, and it was just a work in progress. He was a guy in the band, and I thought that the band had their it's hard to explain, because they were professional, but they were not professional musicians at the time. They were professional in their outlook, and it was great, as I just said, that we got together and went through bass and drum parts, the promotion stuff that they would work on. They had their own logo, etc., etc. So up until then, I'd never experienced that, but on joining them, I thought, they are focused.
Yeah, I agree, and I think Steve would say the same thing you just said. We're a band in the making, right? I think that's very well put. And by the way, so everybody knows out there that I'm not sure how much the Iron Maiden documentary, the early years, I do remember there's a picture of you there. I think you speak in there as well. Do you not?
Yes, I do. Yeah,
you do, right? You do, yeah.
Iron Maiden and the new wave of British heavy metal.
Yeah.
That's the video that we did. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, so we have the recordings, and just so everybody knows out there, and some of you may or may not know, Samson, of the band that you're in afterwards, they did a recording called Thunderburst, and that is basically, if you listen to that track off Samson's album, I think it was Head On. I can't remember if it's Head On.
Yeah.
That is basically Ides of March. I mean, to the point where Steve Harris is credited on Thunderburst as well. I mean, so that's how. I mean, was there legal action there? What happened there?
Okay, what happened was that we went in and recorded Head On. We had material that we had, because it was going to be the first album that Bruce Dickinson was going to appear on, and so we had been writing quite. Had quite an intense writing. As soon as Bruce joined the band, because we'd been a three-piece, he joined the band, and it was really intense, and it was great because it was just what we needed for a new injection of life and what have you. So we went in and record Head On, and I brought Thunderburst to the table. Hence the name is called Thunderburst, because it was my idea. So I came in, I had this rolling drum pattern that went through the toms, and I explained that we had done this when I was a member of Iron Maiden. So we recorded it, and Paul Samson and Clive Burr were quite good mates, because Clive had been in Samson before I joined Samson. So we kind of literally swapped places. Clive went to Maiden and I went to Samson, and there was a time when Clive would have Samson all sprayed on, stenciled on his drum cases, and he'd be out with Iron Maiden, and vice versa for myself. I would have Iron Maiden on my drum cases and I was gigging with Samson. So it was quite strange. Anyway, Clive Burr went over to Paul Samson's house, and they were sitting there, and Paul played the first side of the Head On album, and Clive was, yeah, great, that's really good. So he went and slapped the second side on the B side, and up came Thunderburst. And Clive nearly fell off his chair, and he said, Jesus, you've got to put this on. And he put on his finished recordings, and up came Ides of March. And then what happened after that was that my management at the time, the Samson management, didn't really want to have any involvement in this, and it was, no, we don't want to get involved in this. I was summoned to EMI, the EMI building, and in front of me was Steve Harris, Rod Smallwood, a couple of representatives from the legal team, and also a couple of representatives of EMI. And I was told in no uncertain terms that Steve Harris would take half songwriting, 50% songwriting on the Thunderburst track, and I would receive absolutely nothing on the Ides of March track. If I wanted to contest that, then we'll see you in court. And that was about it. That's about the sum of it, really. That's why Steve has 50% of the songwriting on the Thunderburst, and I have absolutely nothing on the Ides of March.
And I guess I would assume that if you pursued it legally, it would have cost an arm and a leg, and that's why you didn't go for it.
EMI had just signed up Iron Maiden, and were fully committed to that band, and were going to, they were going to finance it in the way that they saw fit. And I mean, with Samson, it was much smaller scaled. Our management had money, but they had nothing like the amount of money that EMI were able to put behind Iron Maiden. And you're right, yeah, if it had gone to court, I could have ended up, if I'd have lost the case, I could have ended up in any kind of condition.
Just so you know that, I mean, would you ever think of some sort of court challenge now? And again, I'm not trying to punish Iron Maiden here. We're just talking here about, I mean, look at Stairway to Heaven, right? I mean, you're talking about 40 years later, these guys are claiming that, you know, that they wrote the song.
That wasn't Randy. That wasn't Randy California. It was some smart ass that decided that he wanted to do it on behalf of Randy California's estate, and they lost. So, you know.
Well, I mean, I think Thunderburst is a little more clear cut. I mean, given the fact that you were in the band, do you have original recording of Thunderburst with Maiden on as a jam session?
No.
That's probably where you
Exactly. That's where if it had been on that tape that I've just shown you, then that would have been great. It would have been perfect because I could say, look, here is the recording of this, and here is my input into it, etc.
Yeah. That would have been the smoking gun, my friend. That would have been the smoking gun.
Yeah, it would have been.
But it is what it is, right? I mean, look, your music's on an Iron Maiden album, and people know it. I mean, it's just not, you know, in print, right? It's too bad.
I mean, because of the interest in former members of Iron Maiden, you know, I'm a member of Maiden 77, which has emerged over the last year. It's a couple of fans of Maiden put together, one being Dutch, the other being English, put together this Maiden 77 site, and they wanted to know the history of all the members of Iron Maiden, and they did really well. They managed to pull at one time. I think there was 7 or 8 of us in the same venue at the same time, which was quite remarkable. There was a picture of all of us lined up, all ex-members of Maiden. Guitarists and myself and drummers, and you know, it was just quite remarkable. And obviously, because of that, there is a lot of interest in old members of Maiden.
Well, everybody loves Maiden, right? I mean, like you said, it's the Holy Grail. I love Maiden, you love Maiden, we all love Maiden, right? And we just want to, you know, and of course, the early years is, like you said, the Holy Grail, right?
Yeah, that's it.
And that's cool. I mean, that's great.
But in doing that, it's thrown up a lot of things that are contrary to each other, and it's thrown up all kinds of different things where, you know, so-and-so said he had an input into this song, and yet the history books or the books written about Iron Maiden show that not to be the case. And so a lot of people are interested in you know, digging the dirt, as you were.
Well, I think that was part of the documentary of part 1 of Iron Maiden, sort of closing the chapter, showing everybody that all these members were involved in the making of the band, and I think that was the intent, you know, like to show how Iron Maiden got to be who they are today. And
yeah, but there are a lot of things within there that were not the truth.
I don't know. So what wasn't the truth then? Like, I mean, give me one part that wasn't the truth. Like,
okay, but
we're not going into a long story either, right?
No, all right. Okay, there are certain. For example, it was said that Paul Di'Anno wrote the lyrics to Charlotte the Harlot, for example, and yet I have a tape here in 1977 of Dennis Wilcott, the then vocalist, singing Charlotte the Harlot. So you tell me. I mean,
but let me. I don't think he's credited on the album for Charlotte the Harlot, though. Like, I mean, from my memory, is he?
But there were a lot of inaccuracies. There was, for example, the Soundhouse tapes. There was a guitarist on that, Paul Cairns, I think. He was never even mentioned, the fact that he plays on that Soundhouse tapes. Now, that's wrong. For information, what you should do is you should go on Facebook, go on to Maiden 77, and you will see the inaccuracies there. I mean, there are lots of things that are all sort of quite contentious.
Yeah, and just so you know, but just to play the other side here, I do documentaries too, and to talk about every single guy that joined for like a day or two, you know, sometimes it can't fit in an hour and a half, right? So it has to be condensed.
Of course.
Yeah,
of course. I'm talking about for your own, interest.
You know, and I would tell everybody too, if you have this huge Iron Maiden interest, it's, what is it, Maiden 77?
Correct.
Okay, so go on Maiden 77 and get the whole real deal, the whole real accurate stories there.
It's really cool to look at. It really is. The Dutch guy Erwin brought out a book called Outside Iron Maiden, and it's just absolutely full of all the projects that all different members of Iron Maiden, right the way back to the first year, what they've gone on to do, which is really, really interesting. It's really good. Now, what we're doing is when Iron Maiden play the UK this year, the day before that they do their London gig, the Maiden 77 guys have put together a gig for multiple sclerosis. It's all to do with Clive Burr, obviously, who died of multiple sclerosis, or died due to complications of multiple sclerosis. And so it's a charity gig, and there are going to be 5 ex-members of Iron Maiden on the bill.
That's wonderful. That's a great cause, and great for Clive and everybody else who suffered from this. And
that would be cool, because I'm supposed to be headlining it, but which would be good. And obviously there's going to be a lot of Iron Maiden fans in London at that time.
Yes.
So hopefully they can go along and get a bit of history one night, and then go and see the real deal the following night.
Did you guys ever think of touring? Did you ever think of touring? Hey, I don't know, maybe coming to Canada, just do a little tour. I think it would be cool. I mean,
Yeah.
Did you ever think of that? Did you ever talk about something like this?
We haven't as yet, because we're all doing our little projects. I'm doing my new album this year, and the 2 other guys, the guys that were in the band when I was in it, that's Terry Wapham and Dennis Wilcott. They got together and they've recorded an album, so they're going to release an album this year. So, yeah, we haven't as yet, but that's a good idea.
Really good. Okay, so just to close off on the Iron Maiden part here, because we're running really late. Close off on Iron Maiden. So you were in the band for how long, and then why did you just leave, or did they tell you to leave? What happened?
Well, they seemed to. No, nothing like that. It seemed I was in. To be honest with you, I really can't remember how long I was with the band, without digging out all my diaries that I used to keep at that time. I couldn't really tell you, but what happened was that it kind of started falling apart. Something happened between Steve and Dennis Wilcott, the singer, and Dennis was like, "Oh, I've had enough of it," and what have you, and it just really kind of just sort of petered out. It didn't there was no great big argument or anything like that. Steve was intimating that he would go back to doing what he was doing at the time, which was he was learning to be a I can't remember what it was, civil engineer or something like that he was doing, and he was he was doing tech drawing at the time, and he intimated that he would go back to learn that, and that was it. I mean, I can remember it. I got a gig in South London, and the band turned up without Dennis, the singer, and we couldn't play. So I think also that there was Steve had by that time had realised that the keyboard player wasn't going to work at all. So he'd gone, and another guitarist was coming in, and Terry, the original guitarist that was in the band with me, he didn't want another guitarist in, and that other guitarist being Dave Murray, obviously. And it just all fell apart. We attended this gig and we didn't get to play the gig. In fact, we all sat around just talking, and it was like, okay, see you, and that was it.
And at the time, did you think, I mean, as great as Iron Maiden is today, did you think at a time that, wow, this band, Steve will continue it or not continue it, or it's over and that was that?
Yeah, it was over and that was that. I mean, I wished them best of luck and what have you, but there was nothing official. We just didn't bother phoning each other.
All right, thanks for watching The Metal Voice. My guest, of course, Thunderstick. That was part 1, the Iron Maiden years, and before the pre-Iron Maiden years. Stay tuned for part 2, which will talk about Bruce Dickinson, the Samson years, and what he's doing today.
Thank you.